Hello, my name is Matthew Connor. I'm a St. Louis native, born and raised, and a United States Marine Corps veteran, in which I worked in the intel and logistics field. I've spent most of my life in sales, particularly in the real estate market, and a true passion and hobby of mine has always been movies, which is why I chose that as the topic for my project, but more specifically, movie genres, their popularity, and during what time of year those genres fare best at the box office. That's also why you see Jimmy Stewart's It's a Wonderful Life as my backdrop, since this project is being submitted during the holiday season. So let's jump into it. The question that I'm looking to answer is all genres of movies draw different crowds, but which genre holds the most appeal to the masses, and do these genres fare better during a specific time of year versus others? The data that I utilized surveys a 5-year period from 2014 to 2019 of movie releases and their opening weekend gross at the box office. I'll go into more explanation as to why I chose this 5-year period later on. The information provided from this study will serve as a guide to production studios as to what genres of movies will net their businesses the most profit, and more specifically, what time of year is best to release such films so as to attract the largest audiences. I've always been fascinated by movies, from their actor-director relationship to the utilization of physical sets versus CGI technology. Movies have hundreds of facets that attribute to their success or demise. However, I want to take a closer look at the bigger picture of the audience genre correlation to divulge the appeal of certain movie types and how they compare with each other. More interesting than the mere popularity of certain genres to others was analyzing whether the film industry utilizes an algorithm for the release of specific movie types to draw a bigger crowd, or if the analysis of this data would reveal a pattern for yielding the best box office returns during a certain time of year. This information serves as sort of a map to the production studios to time the release of their films according to the season in which specific genres gross the most in box office revenue, as well as providing an anticipation platform for the avid moviegoer of when they can expect their favorite film to be released. In regards to my data for my study, I drew new release information from the years 2014 to 2019. This is due to the fact that COVID-19 had a dramatic effect on box office returns, as well as movie releases in general beginning in 2020. This also initiated a steep rise in the streaming services industry, including but not limited to their content, utilization, availability, and platforms. This drastic offset in data would have caused a major misinterpretation of my analysis, and in fact poses a whole separate set of questions to be answered altogether. I would like to use these initial studies as a platform to launch further inquisition on multiple levels into the film industry. I decided to use the opening weekend gross value to gauge the popularity of films and their respective genres. This number most accurately reflected a movie's success and narrowed it down to a specific time of year. This best provided the necessary information to conclude concise results for my analysis. An exhaustive search of resources led me to two primary sites, Box Office Mojo and The Numbers. I found data sets in each that contained information for my analysis, but each was missing a vital piece of information key to answering my question. The key was going to be combining these two data sets through a certain value to attain the necessary information for my project. I initially utilized Python to start preliminary cleaning and organization of my data. This was the process for my first and easiest data set, which contained a key piece of information, opening weekend gross, vital to the accuracy of my analysis. My first data set was paramount to answering my question, but it was missing one extremely important piece of information, genre. In order to incorporate that into my data, I required a much bigger data set that could pair with my first data set, as well as integrate an integral piece of data, genre. My second data set required much more work and more reformatting so as to match other information from my initial data set. Once completed, my two data sets were ready to be used in other platforms to combine the data and create presentable outcomes. SQLite served a simple yet vital role in the organization of my data. My initial set contained opening weekend gross, which was the best fiscal measure to gauge the popularity of movies. However, it was missing a category for genre, a key component in organizing my data. The second data set encompassed a much broader range of films, over 7,500, with each grouped into genre. I used the large data set to pair with my initial data set to match each movie, thus giving me a final data set of 256 rows of information, which included opening weekend gross and genre. The analysis of my data could now begin. Looking at the individual movies per genre showed us a broken down and detailed visual to understand the revenue generated by each film in its respective genre. Here we can see all 256 films listed and categorized into their respective genre, visualizing the amount that they grossed on their opening weekend in the box office. While this gives us a good idea, a more concise format of the data was going to be needed to answer our question. A specific analysis of each genre and their total gross for all movies released per category provide a more accurate representation of the answer we were seeking. This graph here clearly showed that action films held a significant lead over any other. However, more information was needed to answer the other aspect of our question, during which time of year were these genres the most popular. Two factors also needed to be considered when drawing near to our conclusion: the total amount each genre grossed during opening weekend through the 5-year span, as well as how many films each genre released. We can see that there is a very close correlation between these two values. Our first graph here is highlighting each individual genre and how much it grossed in total over the 5-year span during opening weekend. And this graph breaks down each genre and how many films were released in each genre over the 5-year period. Once again, you can see a very close correlation between the amount of money grossed during opening weekend and the number of films released per genre over the 5-year period. A calculation was needed to consider the opening weekend gross revenue versus the number of films released per genre. In order to visualize that data, an average aggregate was needed. While our scatter plot here provided a simplistic view of these genres compared together, the whisker graph provided much more detail. As you can see here, action up here at 127 total movies released with a 68,406,700 average release per opening weekend release per movie. Animation a close second. Other categories clumped together down here with not as many movies and not as large of a box office return. Our whisker graph provided much more detail. We were able to see that the action genre with the highest number of releases held true to the most popular genre. However, animation did rank higher for the mean revenue in opening weekend gross. A whisker graph in this gray area takes the 25 to 75 percentile range, the darker gray being the 25 to 50%, the lighter gray being the 50 to 75%, and the line in which they meet is our mean. We can see that animation had a higher mean than the action films, but the action films still held a larger grouping of the 25 to 75 percentile range. Now we want to take a closer look as a whole per genre to see which season the most popular genres yielded the highest box office returns. While this graph incorporates all 10 genres and shows each year broken down per month, we are going to need to take a more detailed look at the highest rating genres to see when they fared the best during the year. Action movies once again exhibited a consistent peak in the spring, usually beginning around April and declining again in June to July. Typical action movies feature a hero that faces a challenge. Initially doubting themselves, the hero fails, only to regroup and rise from the ashes to victory. Spring is a season of rebirth, and the action hero genre motif falls in line with the spirit of the spring season. So we see that action films did hold a consistent peak during the spring seasons from the years 2014 to 2019. Animation films, as the second largest genre and yielding the second highest box office return for opening weekend, shows a consistent peak during summer, rising once again around April to June and lowering from July to August. This is most likely attributed to animation films being geared towards children who are out of school during the summer months, hence the peak in box office revenue during the summer months. Comedies make a very interesting transition halfway through the surveyed years, showing a height of release and revenue during the spring from 2014 to 2016. Comedies suddenly shift and begin showing a new peak season in fall from 2017 to 2019. One could speculate that with the passing of summer and lush green fading to dying brown, comedy saw an opportunity to appeal to crowds' desire to laugh and feel happy when the onset of fall and the prospect of winter can trigger seasonal depression. A less popular genre with fewer releases, yet still yielding a high average opening weekend gross per movie, is crime. Although there is not much data to pull from, we can still see a consistent trend from 2014 to 2019 during the fall season. Although an immediately apparent correlation to the season and the genre is not readily apparent, it would be interesting to take a closer look at crime statistics and see if they show an increase around this time of year. And lastly, while other popular genres show noticeable trends, others appeared to have no pattern to their popularity at all. Drama and adventure displayed varying peaks in opening weekend returns. As these were smaller and more specific genres, it may be that there is no apparent trend. However, a closer look at these individual genres and expanding the time of year in which they're surveyed could reveal more detail as to a peak season for their popularity. So at the end of my analysis, I was able to conclude that the action genre is the most popular genre and yields the highest box office returns very specifically during the spring seasons. Thank you very much. I appreciate sharing this information to you, and I look forward to expanding on this analysis into further aspects further on. Thank you.